Hello and welcome. My name is Adam Sanchez, and I am joined here by Stephanie Kraft. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
And today we're doing a video on narcissism. So it's understanding narcissism, the basics. And this is actually going to be a series of videos because there's a lot to talk about on the subject. And both Stephanie and I have felt really passionate about bringing this subject to the consciousness of the collective because narcissism is so present in the world today. And also, it helps that Steph and I actually have a lot of experience on the subject. So, Stephanie, why don't you take it from here?
Okay, thank you, Adam. So I did take notes, so I might look down a couple times to see which topic we're going to jump around to. So the first thing we want to talk about in this video is how narcissism is developed. So I'm going to give my version, and because both Adam and I have a wealth of knowledge and experience with this, he's going to also give his version because we think that by each of us explaining it, it will really resonate with people across the board. I might say things that he doesn't say and vice versa. So what I have understood about how narcissism develops is that in infancy, so as soon as a baby is born, if one or both parents is a narcissist, and we'll explain what that is later, but this is how a narcissist is developed. So in infancy, when the baby is born, if one or both of the parents is a narcissist, that parent will not be responding to the baby's needs appropriately or in a timely manner. And so, for example, if the baby is crying and the baby is neglected, left alone in a room, or not responded to immediately or within a reasonable amount of time, the baby will then realize that, or, let me backtrack a little bit, or if the baby is yelled at for crying or hit, then the baby will realize that by it acting as itself in its natural way to get its needs met, get the attention that it needs, isn't working, then the baby will realize, gosh, being me isn't getting my needs met. So what happens is at the deep unconscious level of, I need to act differently, not in my true nature, but in a way that will get my needs met. So what happens is the baby, and this can happen in infancy, it can happen in toddlerhood or early childhood. It usually happens very early on when the child is developing their sense of self. So when they're not having their needs met with their own true nature, their authentic self, what they do is their authentic self drops out of the picture because it's not working, and they create a false self to get their needs met. So they become manipulative in order to get their needs met. It's for really survival. So they learn this behavior of becoming a master manipulator. So what they're doing is they're actually reading each individual. They become very good at reading people. And so they read into the person how that person will respond to them, how they need to act in order to get their needs met. So when they grow up, even in childhood and later on, what they will do is read each person and see how they need to act to get their needs met. So they will put on a false persona for each individual person that they're dealing with. And they really have lost their sense of self and really don't even know what it is anymore because they dropped that so early on in life. And how would you describe the development of narcissism, Adam?
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good description. I love that we have these different perspectives because, like you said, I think they offer a wholeness, and an integration that we might not have otherwise. I think there is a lot of truth to that, especially the part about disassociating with the authentic self, because really the authentic self is connected to the divine. It is one with all things, right? That's the true nature of who we are. And it's the society, the programming, the fears, the traumas that we adapt or experience that sort of distort and bring us away from that true authenticity. So as I've come to understand it, narcissism is essentially, pathological narcissism versus, the small healthy doses of self-preservation, is a function of trauma. So, what you were talking about, the baby not getting its needs met, is actually a traumatic event for the child. And so it can look in that way, something as simple as not getting the milk or the attention, or it can be something else. But basically it comes down to trauma, and that trauma will basically wall the soul off, not only from itself, but from its sense of connection to life, that it's able to trust life and interact with life from that authentic place. And so what ends up happening is it starts to use that false self as a defense mechanism to avoid future trauma. And the best way that the psyche or the personality can do that, as far as this is concerned, is by disconnecting from the emotional component of the self, right? The pain that lives in those emotions of the unfulfilled longing or what have you. And so what ends up happening over time is it becomes more and more disconnected, the personality, from the authentic, emotional, vulnerable, even painful experiences of life. Then it becomes more almost robotic and programmed, response and recall in order to get those needs met. But it's not even necessarily in touch with needs anymore. It's basically almost like an automaton, just like survival, basic survival. And at that point, oftentimes, as I've come to understand it, there is no emotional connection to themselves or the world around them. And that's why they function the way they do. It's just a matter of, input, output. The people that they relate to, they don't actually see as people, they see them as objects. And ultimately, they don't even see themselves as a person. They don't even know, because of that deep-seated trauma.
Oh gosh, your explanation couldn't be better. It is so perfect. And I want to add to that, which is, what you said, but adding another layer to this, which is, from my observation of narcissists, it seems that their soul is not embodied in their body. So I think that by the experience of trauma, what happens when we experience trauma is we will fragment out. So a part of our soul will leave the body because it's not safe. Like, I don't want to experience this. I'm going to leave so I don't get traumatized and so I can preserve my soul and not be wounded. So we have these soul fragments that jump out. We get defragmented. Is that the right word? And
I don't think so, but
no, we get fragmented, right?
Yeah.
And
I think you're thinking of the computer defragmenting.
I have no idea. I don't even know about that. But yeah, we get fragmented, and this happens to everybody, but with a narcissist, it's like the whole thing leaves. Maybe not the whole thing, but I'm exaggerating, but it does, with a lot of them, seem like barely any of their soul is present within them. They seem very much like an empty shell operating from a place of fear and survival and protection and the defense mechanism, where even if you talk to them about trying to get real, like about the situations at hand, they can't go there. It's because it's not there. It's absent for them to even try to retrieve who they are. It's been so lost for so long that, even attempting to do internal work would take a lifetime to heal. And, we're not going to talk about that part of it today at all, but we can move on to the next topic. So I'll let you begin. I'll ask you, what does narcissism look like? What are the behaviors? How do they act? How can we see it in another person?
Sure. So the first thing that I want to point out is that there are lots of behaviors that can be narcissistic in their scope and perception, but that ultimately, when we're talking about narcissism, the clear delineation or distinction is the lack of compassion. And that's our fundamental human quality, right? To understand that we're connected, that what I do may influence you and, affect you, and that I am, beholden to respect that, you have your own humanity as well as I do, and for the narcissist, that's not the case. They don't have that function of compassion. They don't relate to the world from that level of human connection. So, you can say some of the stuff that I'm going to list right now. It could apply to a lot of people, but when you couple that with the fundamental quality of lack of compassion, we're talking about the true narcissist. And there can be a lot of people who express those things who might, we can talk more about that in our next video, but really just talking about the lack of compassion as the core of all of it. And then, we have these spokes that come out of it. So one of the things that, that can come out of that lack of compassion is pretty easy to see is, manipulations and distorting truths and lying, to serve their own ends, to, get their needs met, or, what they consider to be the need. Maybe it's not a need, maybe it's a want. Maybe they want a lot of attention. And that's another thing that the narcissist will almost always try and make it about them, to the best of their ability, because they want the validation. A constant need for validation is another one. And to the point often of invalidating others. That's actually probably a pretty prevalent one. I think a lot of people can see. And yeah, that's narcissistic in its nature. People who do that may not be narcissists, but it is absolutely a narcissistic behavior. Let me think of a couple of other telltale ones. Projection, like pathological projection, not taking responsibility for themselves. They're never to blame. It's always someone else who's to blame. And the most ironic thing is that oftentimes, you can see through it because it's so obvious that they're the ones doing it, but yet they don't see that because that's the pathology, right? It's much easier for the narcissist to abdicate all responsibility because the reality that they're causing their own pain and someone else's pain on top of it is just too much for that vacant soul to be able to process.
Yeah, all of those are so true. And I would add to the word compassion, empathy, lacking empathy. And, they're similar, but empathy is the ability to actually feel what another feels. And a narcissist lacks empathy completely, not able to conceive of feeling how another person would feel. The thing also is that narcissists are stuck in toddlerhood, or early childhood,
some kind of arrested development
within an age before, of whether it's childhood or teenage years. But yes, arrested development. They're stuck at the age where the most trauma happened, where the narcissism occurred. And so when we're relating with that person, that is actually the age we're dealing with. And you will see that clearly in the way that they speak. They're speaking as an adult, but what they say, their excuses, their reasons, their entire emotional and mental bodies are coming from that age. So sometimes they act like a 2-year-old. Sometimes they act like a 13-year-old. And it's very real. And you can see that is the behavior of that age. Another point is that, and you said this in terms of they don't ever take the blame, everyone else is to blame. So they take the victim role. They are always the victim. And especially when you're trying to point out issues and problems that you're having in a relationship, rather than being able to work on it or address it, they become victimized, as if they're attacked, and just take over the entire situation and go into a big drama around becoming the victim in that about it. So I'm going to list some more things that how narcissistic behavior manifests. Another one is being a pathological liar. So, because they've created the false self, because they're a manipulator, they will create lies around, pathologically, which is consistently all the time. A lot of narcissists are unfaithful, and they're just because they're not able to make that deep emotional connection with someone, and they're always seeking attention. They're seeking to be filled up but by outside, resources, not from within. And so because they're depleted in that way, they're actually energy vampires. This is actually a real energetic thing, meaning they're so empty. They don't have that soul fuel inside of them that we all should have to be healthy and balanced. So when what they do is they will attach on to others and actually drain the life force energy out of the other. It's called narcissistic supply. And so they're actually gaining energy from others, literally. And so they're energy vampires. You can feel very drained after spending time with a narcissist. They're extremely good. They're master manipulators. Gaslighting is a behavior that they do, which is that they will say something to you and then, which is false or distorted, and if you respond about it, they twist everything around and call you crazy. They turn it around on you and blame you, call you crazy, and also deny that they ever said that thing. Do you have anything else to say about gaslighting? Do you think I explained it well, or do you have more to add?
I think it's pretty good. It's just basically trying to invalidate the other person's sanity, so that they, the narcissist will. This is how the narcissistic function works, right? It's all about manipulation, domination, and control, and deception, because it's the deception that allows for the control. So inside of that, the utmost way to control people is through the deception, right? Through half-truths, through, gearing the conversation towards specific things. And one of the best ways that the narcissist will employ to undermine people and deceive them is to undercut their own confidence.
Yeah.
To say, well, no, you're not right about this. I'm utterly right about this, and you need to trust me because you can't even trust yourself. And that's also, basically it's like a form of mind control almost. I'm telling you how you feel, right? It's like they're trying to actually usurp the sovereignty of the individual by taking that onto themselves. Like, no, I'm the master here and you're the slave.
Yeah, and you don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. You're mentally unstable, emotionally unstable. Yeah.
When meanwhile, the most ironic thing is that they're that.
That is correct.
And that's the ultimate projection.
Exactly. Another thing that they do is that they make you feel guilty if they do something for you or give you something. If they act in a generous way, they will make you feel horrible for it. Another thing along that line is they are notorious for ruining your birthday. See, your birthday is your day, right? Your special day, but they can't stand when the attention is not on them. So they will purposefully give you a gift that they know you'll hate, which will be very disappointing to you, or ruin the plans, anything and everything that you can think of. People have experienced this. They'll ruin your birthday. That's very common. And another thing is that because they have to be the center of attention, when there's a crisis situation or a situation where other people are in need, they will create chaos and drama in that situation and turn all of the attention onto them, create a drama around them, making the situation exponentially worse. Obviously, if it's an emergency situation or crisis situation, they can really destroy that type of environment. It's very common. They also act helpless. So the things that we're listing, not every narcissist is going to have 100% of these things. They might have 50% or 75%. So they might not have a few of these we're talking about. But in terms of being helpless, it's making other people dependent, making themselves dependent on other people. This is a form of control. It's very underhanded, but it is controlling others. So they act in helpless ways and needing a lot of help from others. When they don't technically need it, they are fully capable of doing these things for themselves, but they become in need. They're also very controlling. You know, a lot of times that it's verbally, well, they can be verbally abusive, obviously, but controlling in your behaviors, your actions, and financially. There are a lot of spouses who there's something called financial abuse. This is also very common with a narcissist, where they control the money. They don't give the partner enough money or barely enough. They control everything about finances. And they also are really good at, because they're so good at reading people, they know exactly the places that will hurt you the most. And they actually use that. They say things or do things that are your most wounded places, and they will say things to hurt you exactly in that way. And they also act completely innocent, like they have done nothing wrong really across the board for any of these different behaviors. Do you have anything else to add?
Oh, sure. Yeah, something that just came up to remind me, you know, this is one of the telltale signs, and something that I've learned over the past few years of really coming to the illumination of these, you know, tendencies and seeing them in my relationships. You know, I'm the kind of person who wants to address the challenges, you know, head on, directly, communicate, heal, transform. And you can't really do that with a true narcissist, because a true narcissist, first of all, will most likely deny, project, deflect, and all of that stuff. But even if they say, and I've actually had this happen to me in the past, even if they say, oh, I understand. Oh, you're right. Oh, I apologize. I'll do better, right? Because that has actually happened. And I think it's rare, you know, as far as the narcissistic personality, usually they don't like to apologize or take responsibility or any of that. But it can also be subversively another form of manipulation. Yeah. To sort of just like placate the situation, and you'll tell, because their actions are the ultimate deciding factor. Do they start to follow up on that supposed apology? Do they start to rectify their behavior? And so to answer your question, if there's something else I wanted to add, I think it's really important to notice that 9 times out of 10, the narcissist won't even be listening to what you're saying. They don't actually, it's almost like they don't even care what you have to say, because it's all about them, right? So you could have this conversation, you could tell them point by point, it could be very clear and specific, and then, you know, I think it's a good barometer to know if the person is narcissistic or not, if you find yourself feeling listened to or not. Are they listening to your communications? Are they getting your communications? And are they applying them into the relationship? Or do they just say, oh yeah, sure, and brush it off, and nothing ever changes?
Exactly. And to that one point about are they listening to you? Sometimes they are, but sometimes they dissociate. I don't know if you've witnessed this. I've witnessed this. They dissociate to the point of going vacant. And it's because as soon as you want to address something, a criticism or an issue about them or with them, they can't handle it so much that they dissociate. So they're not hearing you anymore. It doesn't happen every time, but it happens sometimes. And so, yeah, and that's another thing, like the denial. So in general, they'll deny their behaviors if you bring them up, or what they've said. I don't remember saying that. I never said that. Or experiences. I don't remember that. They don't remember. So then you're left being the crazy one. So they're very invalidating. They're always invalidating. There's another thing that they're very negating. So you talked about the word negging, which I hadn't heard of. It's more of a slang term for neglecting, but you want to give some examples of that?
Well, I think negating, it's like, you know, it's like sort of mixing a compliment with an insult, or even just like, they're just trying to undermine that person's confidence so that that person will feel more inclined to achieve the narcissist's attention or approval or accolade. And of course, you know, that's another dynamic altogether that we'll get into soon enough.
Yeah. Is the dog barking bothering the audio here at all?
I actually didn't notice anything.
Okay. So let's see what else we wanted to talk about today. We talked about all that. So there's something that's common, which is if you grow up with a narcissist, we tend to get into a relationship with a narcissist when we grow up. And so, you know, that's who we're talking to, right? We're talking, the audience that wants to hear about this topic are probably people who have been in narcissistic, abusive relationships. And usually it's because they've had that as their experience growing up, and we're breaking free. So in future videos, Adam and I are going to walk through steps for healing this. But I just wanted to mention that it's a common pattern. Another common pattern is for the empath and the narcissist to come together into a relationship. And that's because as an empath, we have an extremely deep understanding of people's feelings. And we're extremely compassionate. We always want to heal, to help, to understand. And we want to be there for people in need, the victim, right? We're willing to help out victims. So, but the narcissist will come along and be able to identify who the empath is very quickly. So this is probably unconscious on both parties' parts, but they're like magnets that attract each other. So the narcissist knows it can very easily get its narcissistic supply or energy from that person, get the attention, get the understanding, get their needs met. And so the reason that it takes an empath so long to break away from a narcissist is that we understand the reasons that they do everything. We understand the psychological basis. And so we're so forgiving and compassionate that I know why he or she is acting that way. It's because this happened in their childhood. I mean, we can psychoanalyze every behavior, every aspect of it, and we're willing to be there for that person. But when we grow up, I'm talking about emotional and spiritual maturity and coming into self-love, we learn it's not beneficial to be there for an abuser. I mean, that's what the person is. A narcissist is an abuser. And so we will talk more about that, the healing aspects later, but I wanted to bring up the common attractions between the narcissist and the empath. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about that or any other topic?
No, I don't think so. Just to point out that the reason why, because that's enabling, right? It's like helping them to continue to avoid getting their needs met. Because the truth is that the narcissist isn't actually getting their needs met from the empath. It's a superficial meeting of the needs because they're not even in touch with their true needs, right? They're not even in touch with their true self. So for them, it's about energy and attention. They think that that's the need, but that's really the need of the infant child or the toddler. Now, as an adult, they have different needs, but they're not even connected with that. So the empath isn't doing any narcissist or anyone any favors by enabling that perpetual behavior.
Yeah. So Adam and I are going to do, this series is going to have approximately 4 videos. This one is about the basics, understanding narcissism. We gave you pretty, in-depth and clear picture about it. And then in the future videos, we're going to have different topics, eventually leading us toward how we can really heal from narcissistic abuse and avoid these relationships and people in the future. So red flags and things like that to pay attention to early on. There's something we didn't mention that's very important still about the basics, and that's love bombing. And so in the beginning of a relationship with a narcissist, and I guess this is kind of getting into red flags, they will shower you with attention, compliments, and be very attentive and present, very communicative. And there's something called degradation, or what's the D word? Are you familiar with this? Like where what they end up doing is the opposite is, or deflation, deflating. But basically there might be another, it's a D word. I know it's out there. It's a common, you know, term in this field, but what they'll do is they'll then knock you down after they've done the love bombing. They'll pull back, they'll retreat, and eventually drop you. Like they can drop people like they never existed, deflating. So they'll build you up and then they'll deflate you. This is a form of control and manipulation, and it actually works because the person involved with a narcissist isn't fully in their power. And so there's this push-pull energy happening between the two of them, and the narcissist is the one in control. Yeah. So do you have anything else you want to say?
I'm thinking if there's any final points to make. You know, I know because we have so much to share on this topic, and there's going to be several videos to come, but I guess I'd like to leave people with a sort of image of these energies. You know, it's kind of like the light and the dark, right? The empath will be the light and the narcissist will be the dark. And that's not to say that, you know, all empaths are inherently good and all narcissists are inherently bad. I think just like the yin yang symbol, there's also that, you know, little piece of the other inside each other. But I think it's good to look at it in terms of energetic dynamics, you know, this positive and negative force. And that when you find yourself in an interaction with someone and maybe, you know, you're really attracted to them, there's this almost electromagnetic connection, but yet you find yourself feeling insecure, doubting yourself, feeling less than, putting this person up on a pedestal, especially because they're putting themselves there and putting you down, chances are there's some narcissistic pathology going on, and it's better to walk away.
I love that. And, you know, let's make that point, which is when you're in the presence of a narcissist, you will never feel comfortable. This is something to really pay attention to. You won't feel comfortable in your body. You'll feel uneasy around that person always. So pay attention to that. It's a big sign for you to know that, you know, that's not a safe person for you. So on that note, let's conclude this video. Our channel is called Enlightened Connections. Please subscribe, like, and share and comment so that we can grow this conversation together as a community. And we will see you again in another video very soon.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Also, feel free to, you know, in the comment section, add anything that you'd like us to talk about in the upcoming videos, you know, questions or concerns that you have with your own experience on this topic.
Yes, thank you. Bye, Adam.
Bye, Stephanie.
See you all later.